Well, howdy thar, Sheriff. Looks like you got some pesky varmints here in the gulch that need straightening out.
What? I'm sorry, what?
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Philly Cheese Gaming. My name is Philip, but like always, you can just call me Philly Cheese. Today, I'm extremely excited to be bringing back Fallout 4 builds. There's a lot of talk on the internet about how Fallout 4 is over, Fallout 4 is dead, what a disappointment it was, yada yada yada, and I couldn't disagree more. I think that the Commonwealth still has a lot of life left in it, especially with things like survival mode and player mods. A game with player-made mods is never truly finished. Plus, Philly Cheese Gaming is kind of like the house that Fallout built, so it's only right that we come back to our roots with another one of my world-famous character builds. Today we're going to dive into survival mode and meet the Prepper. The Prepper was born in Alaska in 2048 to a pair of high school teachers. His mother taught English and his father taught shop. Growing up in Alaska as the child of two teachers meant that the Prepper's summers were mainly spent outdoors with his parents, who shared a passion for camping and outdoor living. Once he was old enough, his father taught him how to hunt, and his mother taught him how to work the hides from his kills into leather for various purposes. The Prepper really enjoyed this time spent with his parents, and grew to become quite the outdoorsman himself. Spending their summers in a cabin in the woods, the Prepper and his family felt blissfully isolated from the growing resource wars over on the other side of the globe. They had all that they needed here in the vast expanses of the Alaskan woodlands. Even so, they often spoke of taking a family trip to Boston to visit Nuka World. The Prepper pored over the flyers for the park at night in anticipation. They planned to go after he graduated, and the whole family couldn't wait. However, during the Prepper's senior year, in the fall of '66, the war with China suddenly came home. It happened during first period. The Prepper was in history class, only mildly paying attention, and Chinese troops started to airdrop onto the football field. At first, the students who took notice thought it was perhaps the local militia doing a drill. These sort of things happened from time to time, although nothing on this kind of a scale. It wasn't until the soldiers crossing the field opened fire on the football coach, who was headed out to greet them, that the screaming and the panic started. The Prepper immediately ran to his father's shop class, and found his father hurrying students out the fire exit and into the parking lot to escape. He told the Prepper to head for the cabin, that he was going to get these students out and then find the Prepper's mother. They would both meet him at the cabin as soon as they could. The Prepper made a run for his jeep with the next wave of students. He could hear more and more gunfire starting to erupt as he sped away, narrowly dodging a group of soldiers erecting a roadblock. Eventually, he made it to his family's cabin in the woods and began to wait. On the radio, he listened to news of the Chinese invasion, and it was when the coverage shifted to his hometown that he heard it. All of the teachers and faculty at the high school had been rounded up and executed after the shop teacher killed a few soldiers while helping some students escape. The Prepper was stunned by the news. Surely the reporter was mistaken. Surely someone had made it out. Obviously it was his father who had resisted, so he had surely been killed right away, but maybe his mother made it out okay. How could the reporter really know if it was everyone? The Prepper clung desperately to this hope, sneaking away from the cabin to spy from the outskirts of town, as much looking for his mother as keeping an eye on the situation with the Chinese. For a week the Prepper did this, scouting during the day and returning to the cabin to listen to the radio by night. After that first week, the power went out, and it didn't come back. By now, the Prepper had all but given up hope on ever seeing his mother again. The town was unrecognizable, having become a garrison for Chinese troops, who now controlled the power grid. Deciding that he felt no longer safe in the cabin, the Prepper gathered his camping gear and hunting rifle and struck out into the wilderness, heading due east. He didn't know if Canada would be safe, but he knew he couldn't stay in Alaska anymore, eh? Over the next several weeks, the Prepper traveled slowly by day and camped by night, carefully hunting as his father had taught him. As the winter grew colder, he fashioned himself clothes out of hide and fur, using the lessons learned from his mother. By now, the Prepper had begun to blame himself for their deaths. If only he had been paying more attention to what had been going on in the world, instead of focusing so much on camping with his parents, maybe they would still be here. If only they had thought to be a little more prepared. Fueled by this guilt, the Prepper vowed that he would make it out alive. He would help retake his home, and then he would go to Nuka World, in memory of his parents. Eventually, the prepper made it to the Canadian border, where he was picked up by an American patrol. The prepper enlists as soon as he is able, and due to his intimate knowledge of the area and survival skill set, he is sent back to Alaska as part of a scouting unit. During a mission to retake his hometown, the prepper provided valuable intelligence about the local area and the Chinese defenses, resulting in a successful recapture of the area. However, during the battle, he suffered a serious gunshot wound and was airlifted back to Canada for treatment. While staying at the hospital in Vancouver, the prepper came to fall in love with one of the volunteer nurses who helped care for him. She was a law student named Nora who had put her senior year on hold to volunteer in the hospital. The prepper had been discharged due to his injury, but he was proud to have helped retake his hometown. He felt like he had lived up to the first 2 parts of the vow he had made while alone in the wilderness. Now it was time for the 3rd part. The prepper asked if Nora would move to America with him, away from all this madness, and become his wife. She said yes, and the two moved to Boston as soon as the prepper was able to travel. They actually got married in front of King Kola's castle at the Nuka World theme park, and the prepper couldn't be happier. His vow was fulfilled, his life was good, and his wife had just passed the bar and was pregnant with their first child. However, despite all of this, the prepper felt a gnawing at the back of his mind. What if the Chinese invaded again? He had been safe and happy with his family in Alaska, and it had all vanished in an instant. The prepper made another vow, this time to do all that was within his power to help protect his new family. He found a like-minded neighbor, and together the two of them converted the neighbor's cellar into a makeshift bunker, slowly beginning to fill it with food, water, and other supplies. The prepper provided a few basic firearms and some ammunition. Eventually his son was born, and they named him Sean, after the prepper's father. The family still made regular trips to Nuka World, and it was really their happy place, so to speak. Upon hearing of the Vault Tech program, the prepper is all too pleased to sign his family up. The root cellar turned bunker was great in case of another invasion, but the vault meant that they were prepared for the worst-case scenario. The prepper was finally achieving some peace of mind when the war escalated once again and the bombs began to fall. He rushed his family into the supposed safety of Vault 111, and the rest is early game history. The prepper will enter the wasteland with 3 strength, 2 perception, 2 endurance, 4 charisma, 3 intelligence, 7 agility, and 7 luck. High agility will give us access to stealth-enhancing perks and boosts our effectiveness in VATS, while 7 luck represents the prepper's personal lucky streak. He may not seem like a lucky guy at first glance, what with all that has happened to him, but when you consider that he always manages to survive somehow, the high luck score starts to make a little bit more sense. After exiting the vault, our hero will immediately go and loot the cellar that he and his neighbor had set up. Also, since we need to sleep to save in survival mode, this place makes a great starter base of operations while you start scouting around the area. Likewise, you will need to build small settlements whenever and wherever you can to help with your sleep and water needs. Food is fairly easy to find around the Commonwealth, and a cooking station at your settlements will help with that as well. Or you can do what I did and download the camping mod, which allows you to use tents and other camping supplies as temporary havens. You still have to craft and carry these items, so it doesn't break immersion as far as I'm concerned. Camping is a thing in real life, so you should be able to do it in Fallout as well. But anyways, back to the build. The prepper will seek out his son, and upon finding him, will reject the sterile environment of the Institute and continue to live as a solo survivalist out in the wasteland. At this point, he will be drawn back to Nuka World by the radio announcement, and the story choices from here are up to you. Perhaps you'll decide that the prepper is done with losing and is going to try his hand at taking, by conquering the wastes with the help of the raider gangs. Or maybe you'll do like me, and work to rid Nuka World of all its various evils, the raider gangs included, and try to restore it to happy place status. As far as the endgame, in my opinion, the Minutemen are the best faction choice for the prepper, as they represent the common man, just trying to stay alive and rebuild some semblance of a sustainable society. Ultimately, it's your character, so make the decisions that make the most sense to you. And now for perks. This time, instead of going over every single perk from level 2 to level 30, we're just going to discuss the major and minor perks that you should be focusing on. This should allow for more freedom to tailor your survival character to your own liking, while still fitting in with our character backstory and recommended playstyle. My biggest tip for success in survival mode is to take it slow and be sneaky, so many of our perk choices will be focusing on boosting our stealth abilities. So with this in mind, our major perks will be Sneak, Rifleman, and Ninja. At the first rank, Sneak will make us 20% harder to detect while in stealth mode, and I recommend you take this up to rank 4, which makes you 50% harder to detect and causes your character to no longer set off traps or mines. Mines in survival mode are pretty much instant death. The 4th rank, which causes distant enemies to lose sight of you when you enter stealth mode, seems unnecessary to me, so I recommend you save that perk point for something else. But again, it's all up to you. Rifleman will cause us to deal an additional 20% damage with non-automatic rifles per perk level, and starts to ignore armor at the 4th rank, so I recommend maxing this out as soon as possible. We're going to be using 2 rifles in combination for this build, and the Rifleman perk is essential to making them as deadly as possible. Finally, the Ninja perk boosts our sneak attack damage by a whopping 2.5 times with ranged weapons at the 1st rank. Sneak attacks and rifles are our bread and butter for this build, so investing in this perk is also an obvious priority. Now for our minor perks. These perks are still essential to the build, but are not necessarily as much of a priority in the beginning of the game. The Prepper's minor perks consist of Lone Wanderer, Mr. Sandman, Gun Nut, and Armorer. Lone Wanderer gives bonuses to damage resistance and carry weight, both of which can become critical in a survival playthrough. Also, for role-playing purposes, our Prepper does not allow himself to become attached to anyone after all the losses he had suffered, so we will be traveling without a companion. Dogmeat is, of course, the potential exception to this rule. Mr. Sandman starts stacking bonus damage for sneak attacks with silenced weapons, which you should be able to get your hands on by now. Also, our next recommended perk, Gun Nut, will allow you to craft your own silencers for your rifles, in addition to boosting their other stats. We'll go over recommended weapon mods when we get to equipment. The Prepper's father taught him a lot about maintaining and improving his hunting rifle, so this perk makes sense from a backstory perspective as well. Finally, the Armorer perk will allow us to improve our armor, and represents the skills passed on to the Prepper by his mother. I also personally decided to invest in better criticals and critical banker, as well as Scrounger and Action Boy. But by the time you reach this point in your survival playthrough, you'll know what it is that you want to improve about your character. The Prepper will stalk through the wasteland with 2 rifles, one for sniping and one for mid to close range combat. As such, we will be carrying a bolt-action rifle modded for range and accuracy, as well as a semi-auto rifle of your choice modded for low weight and VAT speed. Either the combat rifle or the handmade rifle will do perfectly. It sort of reminds me of the age-old AR versus AK debate, so really just pick whichever one you prefer the look and feel of. As far as clothing goes, we will be wearing the green shirt and combat boots, which gives a +1 bonus to both endurance and charisma while still allowing for the use of armor over the top. And speaking of armor, we will be exclusively using leather armor for the same reason that we choose to leave the wooden stock on our bolt-action rifle. These things represent materials and items that the Prepper has experience and skill working with. He doesn't really know anything about modern combat armor, welding, or working with plastics and polymers, but animal hides and hunting weapons are old hat for the Prepper. Mod your armor for the best protection with the lowest weight. I also decided to go with the faded visor for headgear, pretty much just because I like the way it looks, so go with whatever you prefer. Sunglasses provide a bonus point to perception, and remember to always carry around your preferred style of gas mask so that you can be prepared for any sudden bursts of radiation. See what I did there? Finally, as this is survival mode, we feel the need to mention that you will need to carry an assortment of food items on you at all times, as well as plenty of water and empty bottles for the gathering of more water. When you find a clean water source, you need to be prepared to capitalize on it. Am I driving this home too hard? When it comes to settlement building, you'll want to adopt a quantity over quality mindset and build lots of small resupply stations wherever you can. These will essentially be overglorified campsites, with a small shelter, a bed of some sort, a water pump, and a cooking station. I used these small bases in conjunction with one larger settlement at the Red Rocket, where I did the majority of my crafting. Again, these choices are ultimately up to you, and there are mods out there like the camping mod which help alleviate some of the stress of survival mode. Just don't make it too easy on yourself. And that's all, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to drop me a like if you too enjoy the natural beauty of camping in the irradiated wasteland. Be sure to share this video with all your role-playing friends and fellow Fallout fanboys, and if you haven't already, why not hit that subscribe button? It's free after all, and we've got plenty more videos like this coming in the future, plus Let's Plays, mod content, and so much more. And feel free to drop me a comment below. I'd love to get a conversation going. Until next time, this is Philip for PhillyCheese Gaming, signing off.
Alright, we finally made it to the castle. let's just head on in and see what. Oh my God, no! Oh, I just wanted to meet Mickey Mouse.